Hi everyone. I have some things that I've been wanting to share that I feel that I've been coming to understand about the scriptures, but I've been really burdened about whether I should share it or not. And I just want to show you what my screen looked like this morning because I was doing some research, and these are the words I had up over here, and I'll go over these words in a minute. But what happened is I had come to understand what I believe is the symbolism for Acts 27. And this is something I had talked about before. I had talked about how someone had led me to the Strong's number G777 in the Greek. And when I had looked it up, it came up in Acts 27. And this is where it was talking about the 216 souls that were saved on the ship, which is 276. And I had talked about how, based on the context, I believed that this must have something to do with DNA because it was talking about the ropes being cut from the boat and the boat being loosed. And so I looked up the meaning of the number 276, and that's when I found this article over here. And sure enough, it was all about DNA, as is explained in this article. And so I can put a link to this article in the description box. But what I realized sometime after that is that this imagery here with the ship was very symbolic. And I want to explain how I came to realize that. But it was sometime before Christmas when I came to this understanding. It was actually before I did these videos over here that are called, is it a bird, a plane, a whale? And these were about the SpaceX rocket launch and what I believe that represents, and what I believe what's going to happen with the Mount of Olives, what I believe all of that represents. And then I did this follow-up video over here. And it was actually before I did these videos that I came to understand the symbolism in Acts 27. But I was hoping I wouldn't have to explain it because the year was almost over. And this was all about the number 27 and 17, which I'll show you why it has to do with the number 17 in a minute. And as I said earlier, it had to do with the number 777. Okay, that's how I was led to this scripture in the first place. But what happened is, it was some time ago when I noticed that the Strong's number for this word right here, which is the word emphanes in the Greek, and this is another word for epiphany, and this is Strong's number 1717. And as you can see here, it means manifest, figuratively, of God giving proofs of his saving grace and thus manifesting himself. So it has the same meaning as the word epiphany, which is Strong's number 2014 through 2017. These are all a form of the word epiphany. Over here it means to shine upon. It says Christ will pour upon you the divine truth as the sun gives light to men aroused from sleep. And this form comes up in one verse in Ephesians 5:14. But it's a form of the word epiphany, which is this word right here. And so this word spans from 2014 to 2017. And as you can see, it means to show, to, or upon, to bring to light, to appear, to become visible. And so this is the word that's used to describe the Lord's appearance. It's also a feast day, which just happened to be yesterday, was the Epiphany. And as you can see here, it commemorates the baptism of Jesus. It's also called Three Kings Day, Little Christmas, and Theophany. And I had talked about how I had done a table on the word Theophany and Jesus, and it came up with 27 matches, and it comes up in Matthew 20:12 through Matthew 20:17. So it seems to match up with the Strong's numbers for the word epiphany in the Strong's, because they start out with Strong's 2014 and go through to 2017. Okay, so this is 2015. You can see it's a form of the same word. It's also 2016 is a form of the same word. And then when you get to Strong's 2017, you see that that's also a form of the same word, epiphany, which is 2014. So these words are all related to each other. They're all the same word. And I've mentioned before how when you go to the next Strong's number, which is 2018, that word means to bring upon or to inflict. Okay, so I thought it was really amazing that Strong's number 1717 is another word for manifest or appearance. It's a very similar word to the word epiphany. This word is emphanis, and so they're very similar and they have very similar meaning. And so this one is connected with the number 17 as well, because this one is Strong 1717. Okay, so I was curious to see what would be the Hebrew for Strong 1717, and as you can see here, it's the word dad, and it's interesting that it looks like the number 77 when you look at it in the Hebrew, but I was kind of surprised with the meaning. Over here it says it means breast, nipple, teat, so that wasn't at all what I was expecting to find when I looked up that number. But then I noticed over here it says, as in the seed of love. And so I realized that this is the word that's used in the New Testament to describe the seed of love. And here's a couple of examples right here using this word. And you can see here in John 1:18 it says, "No man hath seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him." And then in John 13:23 it says, "Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples, whom Jesus loved." Okay, so I looked at the word in the Greek to see what it was, and as you can see, it's this word over here. Okay, and this means the front of the body between the arms, the bosom of a garment, i.e. the hollow formed by the upper forepart of a rather loose garment, bound by a girdle or sash used for keeping and carrying things, the fold or pocket, a bay of the sea. Okay, and this is the same word that was used in John 1:18 as well, but I thought it was an unusual word to describe bosom because I was familiar with this term, the bay of a sea, or I knew it had something to do with the land formation in the Greek. So I just wanted to look at the images of that. Okay, so I put in this word kolpos because I just wanted to see what it looked like, and as you can see it describes a bay of the sea. You can see these pictures over here of a bay, what it looks like. But then I noticed that it also describes a female body part, and so I'm not going to show all the images of that. But what I noticed sometime after that is that this word is also used in Acts 27 to describe what took place with the ship, and I'm not going to have time to read all of it, but basically it was a pretty violent storm that arose, and it mentions that this was during the time of the winter. And over here in verse 27:7 it mentions midnight, but then when you go down to about verse 39, it's where it mentions this word which means a bay, and it says, "And when it was day they knew not the land, but they discovered a certain creek with a shore, or a bay with a shore, into which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. And when they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves unto the sea, and loosed the rudder bands, and hoised up the mainsail to the wind, and made towards shore. And falling into a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the fore part stuck fast and remained unmovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. Okay, so the symbolism is very important here, where it talks about where two seas met. This reminded me of when I first started talking about DNA, where it was coming up in Mark 11, where it talked about how the donkey was tied, where two roads met, and I realized that this was describing DNA. And so I looked up this word in the Greek. You can see it's the word the thalassos, and it means between two seas, or divided into two seas, dividing the sea as a reef. And I tried to pull up some images so I could see what that would look like, but as you can see, there weren't really any images of it. But I noticed over here it had the word cross currents. And so if you look up the word cross current, you can see it means a current in a river or sea that flows across another, or process or tendency that is in conflict with another. Okay, so then I put in cross currents, Mediterranean Sea, because this is where this took place. They were sailing towards Italy from Crete. And so you can see over here the images, Crete's over here, Italy's over here, but you can see what it would look like to have a cross current where two seas meet, or where there's a conflict between the waves, where there's a current going in one direction and another current going in another direction. So this is very similar imagery as what was in Mark 11, where the two roads met. They were going in opposite directions, and where the donkey was tied. And that's when I had realized that that was describing DNA when I did the videos on Mark 11. And so this is a similar imagery. It's also similar to the imagery that came up in the Matrix for SpaceX that had 17 matches, and it was talking about a space between two droves where the people were divided. It's also similar to the imagery in Genesis 17, where it talks about the firmament and how the light divides the day from the night, or the firmament divides the day from the night, or the light from the darkness. And it's also similar to the imagery in Exodus 14, where Moses parted the Red Sea and the dry land appeared. And so this is also similar to the imagery in Zechariah 14, when the Mount of Olives splits. It's actually the reverse. With the Mount of Olives, the mountain is going to split, and then the living water is going to run through. But you see the cleaving taking place once again in chapter 14. And so when you get back to Acts 27, you see that it's in verse 41, which is like the number 14 backwards, where the ship is broken and the fore part remains unmovable, but the hinder part is broken against the waves, and this is the place where the two seas met. And then when you get to the end of the chapter, you see that they all escape safe to land in the end. And so this is exactly what I believe is being represented by this storm over here that took place recently. And as I said earlier, I was pondering whether I should even share this information, because there's actually more that I've come to understand in other scriptures that I probably would have to explain in another video. But like I said, I was pondering whether I should share this, and then when I got back on the computer, I looked at this video over here by Many Fish, where he was talking about this storm, and I realized that this is identical to what was being described in Acts 27. So I believe this is yet another sign that the consummation of the covenant is about to take place, the restoration of the DNA. And so I just wanted to share that. Thanks for watching, and God bless you.